Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.
Hello, Nest family. Drew Jones, the first thing that came to mind when we started recording the podcast was that Titanic gif when Rose is really old and it's like it's been 84 years. That's what it feels like in between podcasts after a win for the Eagles.
Actually, it's funny that you say that. I just didn't even know how to feel during the game. Because it was just so weird to be in front and to feel like, oh, we're going to win this, just having that old feeling that we're used to having as West Coast fans. And then once we kicked away a little bit in the second quarter, I immediately thought, oh, we definitely have to do a podcast this week. I wonder when we're going to fit it in, when we're going to find time to talk about the Eagles, because, we have to talk about this win. We've been waiting for it for so long. It's been, 18 weeks or however long it had been, longest losing streak in club history. We've only won, 4 games in the last 2 seasons. Geez, it was just so good. And yes, they fought back late and gave us a little bit of a scare, but it was just so good to sit back and see us in front and winning games. What a luxury.
Yeah, it was nice. Look, so much to speak about in this podcast. Shannon Hurn, obviously, we'll pay tribute to. We'll talk about some of the players who look good on the weekends, others who perhaps have got some issues. We'll discuss in a bit more detail the Tom Barrass situation, which we touched on briefly last week, but we said we'd expand on, and a few other things. But I don't know about you. I went into full Nuffy mode, and I kind of chose to because we haven't been able to for so long. Like, it's so – at one stage, I'm like, this is, bottom 2 teams in the comp going at it, 18th SP 17th. And you're carrying on like it means everything to you. But stuff it. We haven't been in the situation all season. I'm going to. So even though, ultimately it's not going to mean that much, apart from just the feeling of having a win, that's the way, like, I'm sure a lot of fans approached it and getting really wound up. My wife's getting into footy more and more. At one stage she said to me, "What are you worried about? You're home." And I went, "We're not home." And then they kicked another one. And they kicked another one. I said, "What are you talking about? Don't ever say that."
Oh, my God.
But it was fun just getting, wrapped up in that all again.
Yeah. When's the last time that we really felt like that? Probably the Derby. Like the Derby, I was in full Nuffy mode and I was feeling like almost unhinged with all these injuries that were happening. And I was like, oh, we can still win this game. And, we were right in it until the last quarter. The St Kilda game, I had to work, so I probably wasn't able to be fully engaged as much as the game was on, but I was in the studio. So this was the first time for a while that I've actually been able to sit there and, yell at the TV because we're in the game. I was doing the pump fist celebrations for goals and dogs were jumping off the couch getting concerned when I was raising my voice. So, yeah, it was a nice change. I mean, it struck me watching the game, Garby, I don't know about you, but geez, like, doesn't it make a difference when obviously we played a team who are in a really bad space as well, but we're actually able to play our game. And I was like, hang on a second. I can see what we're trying to do. Like I can see this ball movement stuff. That was what I enjoyed most, was actually seeing us implement some of the stuff that obviously we've been trying to train and teach through the last 12 to 18 months, whatever it might be, but we've actually were able and given the space and time to execute it.
I think we had the nice balance between what we've been good at over the years and what we've been forced to do in recent weeks when we've tried to mitigate the severity of defeats, which is keeping possession and moving the opposition around by switching and then going quick. And against weaker opposition at home with a few players back, even though we're still missing some big names, we were able to do that a bit more, and we controlled the ball when we needed to, and then we went at other times. We still only beat a really weak team by less than a goal. So let's not get carried away. But it was nice to see that balance for mine. And I loved us chipping it around late. We're going to get into some of the big performances in a moment, but the chip around late to just have that presence of mind and the calmness to ice the game, that was really impressive. Like, there's a couple of moments there at the end where there's still a minute and a half to go and like we're chipping it around and I'm like, yes, chip it. Don't give the ball up. Please, let's do this. There's a moment that reminded me, Drew, of that famous victory against Richmond, which feels like our last big win, really, before it all fell apart, which, is like a couple of years ago now. And we all remember Luke Edwards showing up in that moment, don't we? Like, he comes short. He's a part of that play when JK kicks the big snap. Lukey Edwards does it again. Pressure on. Roos are starting to man up. Yeah, he hasn't had a big game, but he comes short and shows for it late in the game under pressure, takes the mark and then spots up a kick, and then Dom Sheed kicks a beauty to Brady Hoff, and then the game's pretty much gone. We have to win one more contest late, and Yowie does it, maybe with a push on Jaden Stevenson, but hey, who cares? But I just a little casual observation away from all the big names. That's what Luke Edwards does, I reckon. He's got a really calm head under pressure, and I think he's the kind of player who will show that more and more when we're up and going. He maybe gets lost a little bit when we're, like a lot of players do, up against it. But, when we're going well, that calm head, that excellence, skill under pressure, he's going to be important for us, I think, when we're established.
So funny you mentioned Luke Edwards, because I think we talked about it almost from the very start. Did he debut in that away game at the SCG against Carlton, maybe?
Yeah.
And he just
Not
showed...
sure if he debuted, but he looked really good that day. I think he did debut. You're right, he did. He did debut that day.
And he's just shown little signs that he may not be a high draft pick, but he is a footballer. Like, we've drafted... He obviously comes from great stock, but he's always shown little bits of footy nous and IQ throughout his career. And that game against Richmond was his best game. I don't know if you remember, he faked Trent Cotchin out of his Puma Kings at one point in the midfield, but he's really battled those groin injuries in the last couple of years. If he can have a really big preseason, get fit, and then, if we are having a nice changeover in terms of some of the older players going out, he may have a spot, on the wing or through the midfield sort of locked away. And I think he's someone who can really progress, as you mentioned, but I loved his game on the weekend. And one really good bit of coaching that I just wanted to point out that Adam Simpson implemented over the weekend, and you may have noticed it late as well, was we were obviously short on key defenders, and I messaged you, or maybe you texted me first when the teams came out with Barrass and McGovern not playing. And I said to people at work, I was like, I don't know if we can win without Barrass. Like, every time TB hasn't played this season, we've got hammered. So I was worried that we didn't have McGovern and Barrass. So Hurn played as the tall defender, and then obviously Bazzo gets subbed out for Yo, which was a planned tactical move. So when we had the ball in our front half, particularly in stoppages, Bailey Williams was playing on Nick Larkey, and then Hurn dropping back, and then Witherden was playing as a loose man right behind the ball. So clever from Adam Simpson to use Bailey Williams essentially as a key defender, but not having to actually defend in back 50, because obviously that's just a different skill set. And then Williams outmarked Larkey a couple of times. So not only did we mitigate that kick down the line, which maybe North Melbourne would have marked, maybe they spoil out of bounds and they move the chains sort of down the field. It was actually outmarking him, and we kept the ball in an attacking position. I just thought that was just a really nice bit of coaching. Good to see us actually making a move in a game that's working and allowed us to maintain control of the game.
I thought he was just about our best, Bailey Williams. Like, lots of contenders. If you're doing a 5-1, you Williams, Hurn, Kelly, were all in the mix. Darling had a really big game. All in the mix for the votes. Jamie Cripps, fantastic. Those are probably the five you're looking at. I thought Williams was our best, our most influential player. Hurn, really important on Larkey. Just amazing how he stepped up and then announced his retirement a couple of days later. But a question for you, Drew. Has Bailey Williams shown enough now that we should actually forget about pouring a lot of money into Tim English. Paul Hazelby made that point on radio in Perth, and I think it's a great point. I actually agree with him. I'm not saying Bailey Williams is Tim English, not at all. But why do you need to invest so much in recruiting a ruckman when you have a pretty good one on your list who's only going to get better over the next 3 years?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with the point. And I think he's been sensational, and he might even win our best and fairest, maybe come second behind Kelly and maybe Duggan. He's certainly he'd be in the top 5 for the BNF. He's really come good in the last 2 or 3 months. I guess we've essentially got all season next year to see how he goes, because I just don't think we're going to see a lot of Nick Nat Nui. So we can hold judgment on, as far as whether we want Tim English or not. But he's making a pretty good case to be our number one ruckman. I guess, like, could 2025 round 1, could you see Tim English and Bailey Williams both in the team? Like, I could.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, look, I think Williams actually is a decent mark, so he could perhaps learn forward craft and you can have 2. But I don't know. I'm not sure the Dockers have benefited that much from the Jackson Darcy thing, but, you know, they've traded picks. English will be a free agent. It might not cost as much, but you'd still lose your first pick in the draft for him in terms of the compensation.
Well, but we don't lose that pick, the Bulldogs get that pick. We don't lose.
Yeah, sorry. You don't lose. So it's a different situation, but you're still paying massive money. To him, and you may not need him as much. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's necessary for us to go down that path. But you're right. There's a whole year to play out, and expectations have been lower. Maybe with a bigger target on his back next season and more analysis, you analyse his ruck work more, and you need to make sure that craft is at a suitable level, and etc. And Tim English could have another, final series potentially, or a 6 months that elevates him into another sphere. So yeah, it's an interesting one to watch. But geez, he's been really impressive, and Hurn was great on Larky, stepping up against a bigger size, and Jamie Cripps as well. I mean, the goal kicking's important. The tackling's just relentless from him. And I really like the way we used him on the ball. Like, if he's winning contests, that's something I've picked up from Adam Kingsley here at GWS, where he speaks about Toby Green. And you ask him, what are the best things about Toby? And he's just really simple. He goes, the best thing about him is he wins contests over and over in different forms. When the ball's on the ground, when the ball's in the air, when there's a tackle to be made, he wins the contest. Cripps wins a lot of contests. He's not Toby Green, but he can take marks, he makes tackles. So players like that, when you can, obviously they're not full-time midfielders, but get them on the ball, because they can break away with it or make something happen in those situations. So I like us using Cripps more in that role, just get him into stoppages rather than just him playing as a stationary half forward.
What I've liked about Cripps over the last couple of years, Garby, is that his performance hasn't fluctuated as much as we've been terrible. So a fit Jamie Cripps seems to be able to still perform his role, play good footy, regardless of how we're going. And I think if you had have said to me 3 years ago, name a player that might suffer when we start to struggle, maybe I would have put Cripps into that category. But that's impressed me that he has been able to maintain what he does. And I guess it makes sense, because effort, chase, tackle, that's sort of, you can do that regardless of what's happening in the game. But I think he's elevated his standing within the club with the way he's been able to perform when he's been fit over the last couple of years. And obviously we've missed him dreadfully this season after he went down. I think he was one of the ones that went down in the Derby. Great signs again from young Elijah Hewitt, who these burst moments away from stoppages, like, I don't want to just throw CJ3 out there, but there's like something there when you see him get the ball around stoppage. And he's one of the players as an 18-year-old who actually looks like he can fend players off, and he's got confidence and he wants to make things happen. Like, as an 18-year-old, I feel like he's exactly the sort of player that we needed.
Yeah, so the exciting thing about Hewitt for mine is he is the perfect foil to a Ruben Ginbey. Yep. So for mine, you need 3 in your midfield, right? You need your in and under nuggety ball winner. Then you need a player who can do both. And then you need your your burst player, your offensive. So Jinby's does both. He can win. Like Hewitt will be hard as well, but Jinby's your big body, tough in the clinches, can win the ball, can move anywhere on the ground, and then uses it nicely as well. Hewitt's your burst player who's going to just explode away from packs and be great forward of 50. And then we need to find the little nuggety one, which is why I like Angus Sheldrick. And maybe this is a segue into our Tom Barrass chat, which is why I like us including Angus Sheldrick in the Tom Barrass conversation if he does go to Sydney. So I think he can be the in and under nuggety midfielder that we need to complement Jinby and Hewitt. And that combination is going to be fantastic for us. We just need someone who can do the Tom Liberatore and farm it out to Jinby, and then Huey can break away and cause all sorts of havoc.
I was watching Sheldrick a little bit closer this season because I brought him into my AFL fantasy side as a 200 grand rookie, and his VFL scores were really good. But whenever he was playing in the ones, he was like sub or playing on a half forward flank and wasn't really getting near it. And then Longmire decided to put him sort of more into the midfield or on a wing. And once he started getting through that middle rotation, then we started to see the real Angus Sheldrick. And yeah, pretty impressive before he went down with injury. So if he ended up at West Coast, great result. The question is, with the Barrass trade, is that if the Swans end up with, pick 7, 8, 9, whatever it's going to be, would you rather that pick or would you rather Angus Sheldrick and whatever else comes with it?
Yeah. I mean, I like Sheldrick. I've watched him close up. I think he's got the makings of a very good inside midfielder who can also mark overhead and kick goals. Kicked 2 against Brisbane at the Gabba for the Swans. So I'm a fan. I think the Swans rate him quite highly. So you're not going to get Sheldrick in the first round pick. Maybe it's the Swans' second round pick in Sheldrick. Some people might say that's not enough for Barrass, and I get that. If it's not, then maybe you just go with the Swans' first round pick. If the club feels it's not quite enough. But I think Sheldrick it's got the makings of a very good footballer. So I'd be comfortable with it. Sheldrick in a second rounder for Tommy B. We might even have to give something back the other way just to even things up potentially if they're giving up 2 pieces to us for just the one. And we give them a late pick to satisfy what they require. So, yeah, I'd be a fan of that, but we'll wait and see. And we're going to have plenty of options at the draft that we know. We're listening to Rowan O'Brien now on afl.com.au, Eagles list manager, and, he just reaffirmed that the Harley Reid situation's not a worry. In fact, he admitted that he called Harley Reid's family just to check that they were okay after the story that broke 2 weeks ago. He said everything's fine. Like, if we want to take him, no issues whatsoever. So no dramas there. And I get the feeling, Drewy, that we are right into Daniel Curtin and want to make moves to ensure we get him. Reading between the lines and listening to Rowan O'Brien on AFL.com. Yeah,
so the Daniel Curtin one's interesting. If there's a world where the Eagles can do both, then I think they'll do whatever they can to get them both. And the way to do that, I think, is Gold Coast's first pick. So that would require us to trade whatever Sydney would give us for Barrass, which is where we might need the first round pick as opposed to, say, a Sheldrick. And then we'd have to give up a few picks to the Gold Coast because they just want points, right? They've got 2 academy selections in the top 10. So if there was a way we could satisfy the points production that they need and then get hold of their first round pick, then that leaves us that window to jump in and get Curtin at, say, 4 or 5 or whatever it ends up being. The risk is that the Kangaroos, with this glut of currency that they're going to end up with, do they reach for Curtin because they have gone on record and said, well, we haven't drafted a back for a while. We've been really midfield focused. And they get a midfielder if this ends up happening with that Tasmanian who's recently received his Indigenous heritage via NGA. So North Melbourne potentially complicate the situation. Curtin's the best key defender in the draft. So does he make it to us even if we do trade in to a high pick? That's the complex situation that we're in at the moment. By trading pick 1, possibly to North Melbourne, we would guarantee getting Curtin, but then you give up Harley Reid. So what would you rather right now? If gun to your head, would you rather Harley Reid and then no guarantees, or Curtin and another high pick?
Probably Curtin, another high pick, but it depends where that pick is. It's hard to say. You just don't know whereabouts it is and what other player you might get. The thing with Curtin is, the word is that he's not just a key defender. He can slot into the midfield.
Mids, yeah.
Yeah, like he's going to be a chuck him anywhere type player, like Jordan Dawson, Jack Lukosius. He can play forward, back, and go through the middle when you need as well. So that's exciting. Tall, bit of pace, beautiful user. Yeah, that's one that I think the Eagles are really keen on, but there'll probably be another player pick before him potentially. If not, there'll be another pick, I think, around where Daniel Curtin is. So
where do you fall in terms of, do you think we should be stockpiling as much talent as we can, or do you like the idea of a couple of real high-end 18-year-olds?
Well, we're going to have a good 5 or so picks anyway. So I think we're going to have a little bit of both. I think we'll have 3 inside 25, and then there'll be a couple more taken too. But there's some interesting moving parts on this, and that is where they assess certain players who are out of contract. The 2 most notables, or 3 most notables in that sense, and I'll ask you now what you think will happen with them. Xavier O'Neill, Jack Petrocelli, Alex Witherden. All 3 players have played a lot of footy. O'Neill not as much, hasn't been given as many opportunities perhaps some people would like, but Petrocelli and Witherden certainly have, and are still not convincing AFL players. Are they on the Eagles list next season or not, or are they moved on, those players who are now in the middle stages and may be viewed as, to use a harsh term, list cloggers, if you like, are they moved on for those extra draft picks to come in?
I could see 2 of the 3 being on the list next year. I don't know which 2, but I just don't think you can dump all of your sort of early mid-20s players straight away, because I think you sort of need them. Like, we needed to be able to field a team. So they're going to have, like, those 3 probably in particular, they might have to wait for contracts until we figure out what's happening with our draft hand. That would be my guess. I mean, that's what we did with Witherden last year, I think.
Yeah, well, they've basically admitted that, the Eagles today, and Morone O'Brien said that as well. I don't know. It's hard to make a call in any of them. O'Neill, it doesn't seem like the coaching staff rate him that highly. Like, he's the first one dropped whenever someone else comes back. He seems to be the whipping boy. I think he does a good job defensively. He's not a good ball user. That's his issue. But he runs hard, works hard, pretty good tackler. Can give him a tagging job. I don't know. I don't mind him. I prefer him in the team than out of it, personally. Petch can be damaging, just doesn't get enough ball, but maybe he's just a handy player to have. Maybe there aren't enough of those players around. Good speed, and when he does get it, causes a bit of havoc, but just doesn't get it enough. Witherden, it's like he's been on the list for 3 years and we're still in the same position, aren't we, Drew?
But he's just not.
You can see there's something there, but we're
good.
Still not convinced.
But the reason we're not convinced is because he's not that good.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Like, we know what he is. He's he's a medium to warm ball user, and he would be a good player in a good team in the right role. But at the moment, there's been a couple of times this season where he is completely melted down because we were getting absolutely destroyed, and it's just too much for him.
Well, that's the issue. The knock on him is just his contest work. So maybe it's not up to AFL standard. I don't know.
I just think
he's a likable player, but it's just not quite there, and that's probably the issue.
He's a good bloke. Players like him. We're not going to have to overpay him. If he ends up on our list, I'm not going to be worried about it. But he's not going to be in our next premiership team. But It doesn't hurt to have a 25-year-old who's a nice guy and is going to do a job for us on the list if there's a spot for him.
Yeah. Let's get on to Shannon Hurn in a moment. Before that, Andrew Gaff's been pretty good the last 2 weeks. He deserves credit because we've criticised him a lot constructively, but his last 2 weeks have been impressive. I'm not sure it's enough for him to be a part of the best 22 next year. I think my view on him remains that they should look at other offers if they're there, or a retirement discussion should happen. But his last 2 weeks, I've been happy that he's been able to enjoy being out there and he's contributed to better performances.
Yeah, so whether it's a combination of a few players coming back from injury, maybe his body being in a better spot, or whether just being made sub was sort of the kick up the arse that he needed, I don't know what the answer is on that, but he certainly has played better the last few weeks. Has his form in recent times changed your opinion that you could see him at another club, or another club could see him as a potential contributor next season?
Not really. Me personally, no. But hey, I'd love it to happen for him. I think it'd be a great result for the Eagles. But, they might just keep him around to compete still and see out the final year of his contract and offer some excellent leadership and guidance, because his attitude's been exemplary. You can't knock that for a moment. I just think the legs, fortunately, aren't quite there to get through another campaign. But, hey, we'll wait and see. Shannon Hurn called it quits, unsurprisingly. We were waiting for that, and obviously it's been planned for a while with the Bunga beanies that are coming out. But just, what a hero, what a champion. And I think what sums it up best, I'll put it out there on Twitter, but if you do your Eagles all-time back six, I actually don't think there's an argument that can be made for Hurn, Glass, McGovern, and then the famous half-back line of McKenna, Jakovic, Worsfold. And you're putting Shannon Hurn in there, and that says it all about what a legend he's been for the football club.
Yeah, absolute warrior. I called him a tractor yesterday in my retirement package, and there's this great bit of vision we're going to roll out when we chat to Will Schofield tonight of Hurn making a beeline for Bud and breaking his ribs with a legitimate hip and shoulder. And Bud goes down and he's clutching at his sort of rib lung area, and he's in all sorts. And I don't you never see that with Bud. He's a 198 thoroughbred, but Hurn was basically a ball of steel and muscle. And yeah, I reckon there's been a large portion of his career that I've probably just taken him for granted. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of Eagles fans are in the same boat, because he was just so damn reliable. Imagine being Adam Simpson and John Worsfold and having Shannon Hurn's magnet and just being able to drop it on the board and go, whatever role I give Bung, he's going to execute it. He'll just do it. And we had that with Shepherd as well, and West Coast have got an amazing history of having fantastic defenders right throughout our existence. And Hurn, deserves to be in that conversation right at the very top. 332 games. He'll play a couple more home games, but he's just been absolutely fantastic. And as far as I'm concerned, he was a little bit of the start of having defenders that can be a weapon with their foot use, with their foot skills. He was almost ahead of his time in that it was hang on, we got to put someone on him. That's how good his ball use is.
What I've loved about him is he is the epitome of the old school footballer, and he is the greatest example of the no frills personality that I've ever seen in the game. We talk about the Eagles being, Hollywood, glitz and glamour in Perth and that, yet Shannon Hurn has not changed one iota. And it's just purely been from game one to game 320 odd, all about just doing his job at 100% and not being sucked into any of the bullshit that comes with being an AFL footballer. Just has stayed true to that, the country boy from day one. And that's why he was named captain. And I doubt he gave Churchillian speeches or anything like that. It was just all about, boys, it's not hard. Sacrifice, prepare your best, work hard, play hard no matter what the situation, as he said yesterday, no matter what the scoreboard says, no matter what the game, and represent yourself and your football club and sacrifice for your teammates 100%, 100% of the time. That's all he's ever done.
Yeah. And
Nothing more.
I reckon
from game one to the end and never wavered from it.
There's no way that when we read out his name in the 2005 draft that we knew what we were getting, but also how much we needed him. Like, given what the club went through in that period and the upheaval we went through with players and leadership and what have you from the '06 flag, like, could you have pictured anyone better to be there to help chaperone us through it than Shannon Hurn? Like, he was the epitome of what we needed to be post that period, and he was just an absolute godsend. I loved at the start of his press conference yesterday, Garby, he spent almost 5 minutes talking about his junior clubs. He talked about he mentioned 2 cricket coaches. So he had a rookie Saka contract. He was a very good cricketer, apparently. But he was like thanking his cricket coaches for the grounding they gave him and the mentality to win and to be a team player. And I was like, this guy's like a superstar premiership captain, and he's thanking his cricket coach from under 10s. Like, that is just a measure of the man, isn't it? Like, that's him. Like, he doesn't forget. Like, the people that helped made him who he is, he remembers, and kicking with his sister Ashton on the farm in the backyard. Yeah, loved it. Loved every second of it. We're going to miss him. Superstar.
Just so old school. And yeah, it's the perfect personality that the Eagles required at the time. And that's probably a lesson for Eagles recruiters moving forward, that maybe you're going to need a couple of those guys. Maybe Ruben Jinby's one. It seems like he's got a bit of that about him as well, because, yeah, you can get caught up in all the trappings of AFL life in Perth, and you just need a couple of those guys around to just even it all out. Maybe Ruben Jinby's the next one. You know, he's got a little bit more spark to him in terms of the way he presents. But yeah, I like him as being that old school type player who won't get caught up with all the bullshit and keep everyone level headed. Oscar Allen really good on the weekend as well. Is it a lock now that he's our next skipper, Drew Jones? Like, is that conversation over? Luke Shrew, whatever he does next season, won't be captain, and it's just Oscar Allen nailed on. Adam Simpson hinted at that when he spoke about Oscar, and he said he's actually risen with the leadership. He's noticed that big time. Whether Simo's there or not next season, surely that locks Oscar away as the next captain.
I think let's tick it off. Let's just give the captaincy to Oscar. Liam Duggan's your vice. Tom Barrass is going to be at Sydney. And, you know, I actually hope that Shuey's on the list next year, but he doesn't need to be captain. You know, his leadership qualities are set in stone within the club. So, yeah, I think it works for me. And let's just hope that we never have to see him play as a bloody key defender ever again.
Yeah, I think he can be thrown back at times in games just to block up space, but no, he's key marking, pack marking in the forward 50 when we needed it at times on the weekend was just fantastic, and he speaks so well. Yeah, he's superb. So I like, Oscar captain, and then Duggo and Gov as your vice captains. I think that's all you need. With experience, next generation, youth, all mixed in one there in your leadership group.
Yep, sounds good to me.
The weekend against the Bombers, I think we might match it with them for periods. What do you reckon? And with that in mind, are you at all worried now that we're level with North about losing the number 1 pick?
No, I'm not worried. The only slight concern would be beating Fremantle, but my worry about that, silly to say I'm worried about winning a game. I don't think it's in the club's best interest to lose our hold on the number 1 pick. And I don't see North Melbourne winning another game. Bombers will do the job, I think, but I can see us sticking around. But 6-day break, no Hurn, maybe McGovern back this week. We might struggle a little bit, but I thought we might be a chance to beat Fremantle in the Derby, but then they just beat Geelong on their own patch. So now I'm thinking that Fremantle haven't completely pulled up stumps this season just yet. So that's my views. I think we'll be okay. I think we'll finish last. It's by no means a ticking of the box in terms of we're happy finishing last, but I think it's in the best interest.
Yeah. It's such an odd one. I hate talking about it. I want us to go out and win every game. I think that's I maintain it. It's the most important thing is winning culture and having this ruthlessness in your players' mindset from day one. I think that's more important than any spot in the draft, regardless of how good Harley Reid is. That being said, the trade power that we might have with that pick to bring in, one or two more players is very important. So
I think the thing is, Garby, is that I don't know if we're good enough to win any of these games anyway. So I think you can still go out there with the intent to win, and you can still rev up the boys to try and go out there and compete, because I just don't think we're not going to win.
If Adelaide are out of it come round 24, which they might be, I think that's winnable too. They're falling apart. They had a good win in the weekend, don't get me wrong, but they'd lost 3 or 4 in a row before then.
Yeah, I thought they were cooked.
Yeah, so did I. And if they miss the finals and they come to Perth, you
need Tex. Tex has got to be fired up to maybe win a Coleman. That's probably what you need.
Potentially. But it's also going to be Shannon Hurn's farewell, maybe. Look, I don't know. It's hypotheticals here, but it's going to be a big watch now for the last 4 games. I do think we'll match it with the Bombers. They're not going well at the moment. A lot of players out. Gov will come back. We might just give them a little scare over there.
I think we should tag Zach Merritt.
Yeah, for Xavier O'Neill. Perfect.
Yeah, I just think I think we need to, or Gaff or whoever. Gaff can't go with him. So whoever can run with Merritt. Let's not just give Merritt 45 possessions. Let's make him work for it.
I mean, I just like the Bombers. It's one of our great rivalries. I think it's probably thawed a bit in recent years, but one of our few wins in recent times came against them, and there's still that hatred there from the 90s and Kevin Sheedy waving the jacket, for goodness sakes.
I like seeing them lose. I enjoy Essendon struggling.
I'm right with you there.
Yeah, and actually my least favourite experience ever at a West Coast game was when we weren't a bad team, but we came to Marvel and we got absolutely destroyed by Essendon, and I think it was my least favourite experience at an Eagles game, was seeing those Essendon fans up and about.
Looking forward to it. Who knows? Maybe the mentality inside the club is we don't care about number 1 pick. We want to go out there and win every single game, and maybe they'll be fired up. We need to start better. Just don't give them a 8-goal lead at quarter time, please. And I don't think they're capable of that right now, but let's go over there and put in a good showing away from home. That's the next step. We've shown we can do it at home now. We've got over that hurdle. Even though we lost to Richmond and St Kilda, we scared them at times. Now we've beaten North. Now we need to go away from home and put in a big performance at least. That's the hope for the weekend. Looking forward to it.
I'll have my Maxi Bon. You enjoy the Sydney Derby. We'll chat next week.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.